Hi, everyone. My name is Stephen Pu, co-founder of the Taraxa project, and welcome to our live AMA. So today, I'd like to talk a little bit about the Mainnet Candidate rollout. So this is a pretty big milestone for the project, and a pretty big milestone for the infrastructure technology side of our project. So the Mainnet Candidate comes after the testnet, and it's really meant to be exactly what it says, a candidate for the eventual native token conversion, which will happen sometime next year. And we hope it will happen very, very early. And we'll push it as fast as we can. So what we're going to do on the mainnet candidate that's different than what we're doing on a testnet is several things. So first of all, the mainnet candidate is not really meant to be reset, right? It's supposed to emulate what a mainnet is, which is that it's not, data doesn't, you don't lose data. People don't lose data. Even if there are upgrades or hard forks, there are no data loss, right? So that's one very, very important thing. The second very important thing is that the mainnet candidate is meant, like I said before, to host the native token of Taraxa. So soon, early next year, once we have stress tested, security audited, and have coordinated with the exchanges, we will be able to convert the ERC20 token onto the mainnet candidate, and that will really sort of complete, I think, the first of many steps of our path towards a truly decentralized network. Okay, so what are some of the things that I think everyone should know about the mainnet candidate? So the first thing is that this consensus now is going to be stake driven from the community, right? So in a DPoS network, of course, in order to produce blocks and participate in consensus, each node needs to have stake delegated to it, right? So that's the whole point of DPoS. So in order to earn yields, stakers on the mainnet candidate will need to actually delegate their stake into a block producing or a consensus node. Okay, so that's one major difference, and that's one big step forward. Now, many people in the community have asked, well, how many coins do you need to actually delegate into a node? So we've in a preliminary set of metrics, so what we've decided to suggest, right, and of course, all this stuff is up for feedback from the community, is that the minimum delegation required to participate in consensus is 1 million tokens, and the maximum is 10 million. The minimum is very small because we want wider participation, right? So we rather have more nodes than less nodes to make sure that it's more decentralized, right? The reason why there's a maximum is also to ensure a certain degree of decentralization. So, if we don't have a maximum, then theoretically it is possible for everyone to put all their coins, delegate all their coins into a single node, right? Which is definitely not what we want in a decentralized network. So we want to place a maximum on the node to make sure there is sufficient redundancy, right? And large number of disconnected and independent players and actors inside the network. Okay. And of course, the nodes will start earning a commission from this delegation, right? So, for example, if someone stakes and they delegate to a node, all the income that's earned by the node from the block rewards and the fees will get split, right, between the node operator as well as the staker who delegated into the node. Exactly what that split will be like is going to be determined by the market. We've done some research on what other networks have achieved, what are the prevalent commission rates from other networks are, and we'll provide that information to the community as a point of reference. Okay, so the first big thing that everyone needs to know is that consensus is now going to be stake driven from the community. Okay. The second one is that in the network rollout, we're going to be there are going to be two types of nodes, right? So one type of node is going to be actually run by the development team, and it's going to be staked by the foundation. So at the very beginning, we're going to have 9 consensus nodes and 9 boot nodes spread around the world to make sure that we have some sort of bootstrapping to the network. Now, how many community nodes we'll have? Well, remember, we have stake-driven consensus, right? So it depends on how much staking we have. And just the last time I checked, in the staking contract, we have 236 million Terra staked. So that means we will have a minimum of at least 24 nodes, right? And of course, we don't expect everyone to go all the way to the maximum. So we're going to have, basically, likely we'll have more than 24 consensus nodes. And of course, as the amount of stake in the ecosystem goes up, the number of nodes will also go up, right? So this is roughly what the network profile is going to look like. Okay, so the third thing I want to emphasize is that where do the node runners come from, right? I mean, we already have people who stake. Where do the node runners come from? So this is one of the primary reasons why we're running a testnet. In addition to testing the network, we also want to create a candidate pool for the main network, right? So so the testnet will keep going, and the rewards will keep going until we feel like the ecosystem is sort of self-sustaining. But the rewards will keep going, the testnet will keep going, and the testnet will act as a pool of candidates for the main network, right? So as the main network grows, we'll always have more people who are very experienced in operating nodes that are ready to jump in to operate mainnet nodes, because there's so many of them on the test network, right? So this is roughly a very, very high level and highly simplified rollout plan. There are a lot more technical details, and soon, I think later this week or next week, we're going to be posting a detailed outline of all the rollout details, and we definitely welcome comments from the community, some of the designs and decisions that we're going to be making for the mainnet rollout. So for those of you who are wondering, we are still very much on track to releasing the mainnet candidate this year, 2021. And if anything changes, we'll let you guys know as soon as we can. Okay. All right. So as usual, because this is an AMA, let's check out some of the questions that people have been asking online. Okay. All right. So one question someone's asking about is, let's see. Okay. This is from Twitter, right? So from Kolos Rodoskli, hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly. What DAG efficiency in percent do you want to achieve before the release of the mainnet candidate, and what are ways to increase it? So this is actually a very interesting question. So the first thing I want to say is that higher DAG efficiency is not necessarily good. Well, let's take a step back. What is DAG efficiency, right? So I think everyone who's spent any time looking at our Explorer on the testnet will see that on the upper right corner, right, there's this chart, right, that tells you about the DAG efficiency of the current network. So what DAG efficiency means is that as multiple nodes propose DAG blocks, right, because this is a block DAG, we don't have a single, block every single interval. You can have multiple blocks, right? There's going to be overlaps in the transactions that they include inside their blocks. Now, those overlaps will all get sorted out in the ordering mechanism that we have, but there's going to be overlaps, right? So that means if there's an overlap, then technically speaking, the network is less efficient. However, the benefit of having the overlap is twofold. First of all, having overlap makes the network more resilient, right? So if one node goes down or a whole bunch of nodes goes down, the higher your overlap, which means the lower your DAG efficiency, the more resilient the network is. So if a whole bunch of nodes dies, then it doesn't matter because the other nodes, there's going to be overlap anyway, right? So if you have 50% overlap on average, or 50% DAG efficiency on average, technically speaking, half the network can just go down, and it still wouldn't matter because, well, the other half of the network is still picking up the slack, right? So that's sort of the idea behind what DAG efficiency is. The other good thing about DAG efficiency is that it makes transaction inclusion much faster. So when you send a transaction into the network, what you want to know is, did my transaction make it, right? Did it make it into the network? If it made it into a block, then I will feel very good about it because that means that my transaction will be executed, unless there's something wrong on my end, like I don't have enough money or whatever, right? So block inclusion is a very, very important metric when it comes to DApps, right? So they want to know whether or not they can move on to the next thing. And in order to make sure that block inclusion is fast and as fast as possible, we of course want many nodes to compete to enter a specific transaction into a DAG block, right? So these are all the good things of having a low DAG efficiency, right? So what are the bad things of having a low DAG efficiency? Well, it consumes more processing power on individual nodes. It consumes more network bandwidth, right? So there's always a trade-off, right? You get more resiliency, faster inclusion latency, but the trade-off is that you get, you're consuming a lot more bandwidth, right? And of course, consuming a lot more system resources in general. So our current target efficiency is around 50%. Now, there are lots of factors, like I said, to consider. So depending on later performance stress testing, we'll figure out whether or not we want to change that target. But to answer directly to the question is, higher doesn't always mean better. It's all about what you're actually trying to achieve with the amount of overlap you're willing to trade off, right? So hopefully that answers your question. Okay, second question. Why should users, okay, this comes from Serg Sheik. Why should the user believe in our project? How do you imagine a project in 1 year? So I'm, obviously I'm a little biased. I'm very excited about what we're doing here at Taraxa because really we're the only, layer 1 decentralized infrastructure that's designed to make informal transactions and informal interactions trustworthy and useful. So we're making all this wasted data in the world. Over 80% of the data in the world are informal, right? So we're making it trustworthy and useful. So in the past, we've talked a lot about B2B use cases. And today I'll talk a little bit about the social listening use case that we have been working so hard on. And a little bit of preface, the reason why we've decided to work on this use case is because B2B use cases are very nice, but they're not accessible to the community. Normal people are not really going to need a B2B application, right? I mean, that just makes sense. If they needed it, it would be some sort of a B2C application or a C2C application. So the social listening application really makes the informal types of interactions on social networks trustworthy and quantifiable and verifiable and very, very useful, right? So what we see happening within the next few years is that we're going to enable a platform, right, in which people can capture different types of signals. So the platform captures the raw data. It generates signals based on this raw data. And those signals can be used for a variety of interesting things. So something simple, right? For example, if you want to figure out what the next big trend is, or what the next hot crypto asset is, right? Well, social chatter and social sentiment actually plays a lot into the emergence of interesting new ideas and interesting new trends, right? So it's very difficult to actually capture this data in the past. I think the best that we've seen someone do is basically read occurrences of hashtags on Twitter, for example. No one's really mining the conversations that are happening on forums, inside chat clients like Telegram, like Reddit, like Discord, right? So these are interesting signals that you can capture in order to inform your, for example, investment decisions, trading decisions, or just learn more about what's actually happening in the market, right? So that's one interesting use case. Another interesting use case is that because these signals are verifiable and quantifiable, and they flow on chain, they're not stored on chain, but they're flowing on chain, so you can verify them. You can actually start building products, assets based on top of it, right? So one interesting thing you can do is that it can enable a prediction market, right? So instead of having human intervention, trying to figure out different outcomes or different scenarios, you can say create a prediction market based on a specific idea or a specific trend, right? Is someone an idea of X going to become really, really big? or is this asset going to become really, really big? So it's an interesting derivatives market that you can actually create off of the signals that that can complement, right, the direct trading of any underlying asset. You can create derivatives of that asset, right? So it's very, very, very interesting. You can create a prediction market to predict the trends of a specific idea or the movement of specific assets. You can also create these. You can also create a quantifiable and verifiable social token, right? So thus far, I mean, what we've seen in the market, social tokens have been very, they've been sort of floating in midair, as we say. They're not really, there's no really basis on anything. Now, what's very, very interesting about blockchain and decentralized networks is that you're actually able to tie signals into assets, right, directly, right? Because it's decentralized, that's why it's trustworthy, and that's why you're able to do that automatically and directly. So what you can do is that instead of just saying, here's Stephen coin, right, which makes no sense, what does that even mean, right? You can say that, hey, here is an influencer, right? Here's an influencer who has released an asset, and part of the asset is actually pegged into signals that are generated off of our platform, right? So for example, how many new followers are they getting? How many interactions are they getting? How much impact at shifting the topics of conversation, which is a rough measure of influence, do we see recently, right? So all these things you can actually observe and analyze through the use of machine learning and generate these signals. And for example, you can make this asset inflationary or deflationary based on perceived market value of certain signals, right? So if this influencer went on an endorsement spree, for example, like lately this person is endorsing everything under the sun, right? Everything he thinks is good. Well, maybe this guy sold out, right? I mean, maybe his word doesn't really count as much. So maybe the tokens become inflationary the more he endorses things, right? Or maybe his impact has risen, right? He's shifting more and more conversations, creating more and more new topics. Well, okay, so maybe that has a deflationary impact on the underlying asset, right? So there's a lot of things that you can do that introduces a quantifiable and automated component to assets, right? So these assets are not really just floating in midair and purely speculative, that they are actually based on something, right? And this is really the true power of a decentralized network providing quantifiable and verifiable signals. And this is only really, really doable. As far as we know, only people who are doing it is Taraxa. So why should users believe in our project? Well, hopefully you're as excited as I am about the potential of making all this interesting and wasted data useful going forward, and all the interesting use cases that it can enable. Okay. All right. Is it possible for, okay, the question is from the top buyer. Top buyer, is it possible for Taraxa to be used with AI machine learning in the future? If that's the case, what are going to be possible use cases? Well, I mean, the social listening application that we've just talked about, right? That makes heavy use of AI, right? So we need to use natural language processing in order to actually understand what's being talked about, right? So a naive way to do things would just be like, well, let's count keywords of whatever people are searching for. But that's sort of like the stupid way of doing it. What you really want to do is actually have the algorithm understand what it is you're searching for and be able to find things that are not directly, word to word, character matches of what you want to look for, but related to what you're looking for, right? So that's how you identify, because that's how you identify contextualized content, where you don't directly say something, but a human would know that, it is what you're talking about. But more importantly, you can start to identify emerging trends, right? Things that people don't even know to search for, right? I mean, how can you search for the next hottest NFT if you don't even know about it, right? Well, that's the way that we're going to identify. So, so that's going to be a very integral part of the platform, at least for the social listening platform, right? So And I think it's going to be also extremely interesting because on the infrastructure part, everything is going to be open source, right? So so this will help, I think, these algorithms to evolve much more quickly. Okay. Okay. So let's see. Is Taraxa still? This is from Altcoin Angel. Is Taraxa still focused on doing biz dev in Japan, or have you expanded to other countries as well? Well, okay. So for example, the social listening platform that we talked about isn't really country specific, right? I mean, it's really it's a very crypto native and digital first type of application platform. So so yeah, it doesn't really limit us from doing biz dev anywhere in the world, right? In fact, it doesn't really matter where you are in the world with that. With our previous application platforms that we have been building, you know, we have already expanded beyond Japan into the US, right? Okay, from Crypto Mocro, how far are you guys with the mainnet, and what kind of marketing can we expect? Okay, so I think we've just gave an update on the mainnet candidate. So that's going to be rolled out this year. Token conversion, when is that going to happen? We're unclear about that because there's a lot of variables involved that are not really up to us, right? For example, the exchanges, like how long do they need to test our network before they agree to do the token conversion? So that's something that we're going to get more clarity on, and as soon as we get clarity on that, you know, we'll of course inform the community. We're hoping to roll out the token conversion as quickly as possible after the rollout of the mainnet candidate. Okay, let's see. Okay, there's another question coming from Zoom. Let's see, answer live. When can we expect the apps running on mainnet? Now that we're closer to mainnet launch, do we have any partners showing interest to use Taraxa? So we have lots of B2B partners that have already been using a version of Taraxa, right? Now, what we expect to be large scale users, and this is the reason why we're actually doing the social listening application, is because B2B is slow, okay? So anyone who has done B2B before and anyone who has done B2B in crypto before, right? Trying to deploy crypto technology or blockchain technologies into mainstream applications, they'll know that the process is extremely slow, okay? So we do have a lot of partners that are interested. We've released a few partners before. They're, you know, all those are ongoing. And but I think the largest use case that we're going to see, the one that's going to evolve the fastest and gain traction the fastest at a larger scale, is still going to be the social listening platform that we're currently building, right? So that's going to be the interesting thing to watch for us, and we're betting heavily on that. And we're going to, of course, develop lots of partnerships based on what types of signals that we are able to provide, right? So maybe prediction markets are interested in our signal, right? Maybe aggregator sites are interested in our signals. It's you know, maybe social token platforms are interested in our signals, right? So I think these signals will be very will really sort of develop a life of its own, right? So that's the whole beauty of an open source ecosystem, is that the best ideas often don't really come from the development team, it actually comes from the community. So yeah, we're very excited about that. And all the previously announced partnerships, you know, they are going to be, you know, still heavily testing on our network. Yeah. Okay. Well, I guess those are all the questions. Thanks everyone for tuning in, and you know, thank you very much for participating in with the ecosystem, with staking, with running a node, and yeah, please keep checking us out, and all right, giving us feedback. Thank you very much.